Today we're checking out another SCP video. This one comes via commenter suggestion. This is SCP-1000 Bigfoot. Several of you guys have suggested this to me, so we're going to go ahead and check it out. In the SCP universe, I kind of consider most, if not all, of our real-life folklore to be some kind of anomaly or SCP in this universe. So let's go ahead and check it out and see what's up with Bigfoot in the SCP universe.
Joseph and Frank were two lifelong squatchers. No, that isn't an insult. That's a self-given title for Bigfoot enthusiasts who are willing to head out into the woods and search for the legendary Sasquatch firsthand. While most squatchers will go their whole lives without ever encountering one, Joseph and Frank were about to get lucky. They just didn't know what kind of luck. During a journey through the forests of the Pacific Northwest, Frank spotted something moving in the distance. A huge ape-like creature with grayish fur and human-like movements. Frank thought he was finally laying eyes on the mighty Bigfoot after decades of searching. What he didn't know was that he just made a deadly mistake. He had looked directly at SCP-1000, and there would be terrible consequences.
Okay.
Frank was excited. He just achieved the life goal of any squatcher. He tapped Joseph on the shoulder and directed him to look in the direction of the creature. Joseph followed Frank's direction and stared into the distance. When his eyes finally came into focus on the ape-like beast, he froze. His brain just short-circuited. 1 second he was about to encounter the holy grail of his hobby, and the next, he was literally brain dead. Joseph collapsed. In the distance, the ape-like creature disappeared back into the woods. Not that Frank even noticed. He was too busy trying to wake Joseph, but it was no use. Joseph was gone.
Okay, weird. It seems like Bigfoot has some kind of maybe telepathic or mimetic ability to affect one's mind. At first, I thought it was leaning towards kind of a shy guy scenario where he didn't like to be observed, but it appears that he can mess with you somehow, so all right.
And Frank had no idea why. The headlines read, "Bigfoot killed my friend." Most people either ignored it or laughed it off. Just a couple of cranks goofing off in a forest and one of them had dropped dead. Who cares? Well, one organization cared. The SCP Foundation. Mobile Task Force Zeta 1000. The Foundation's specialized SCP-1000 detail were alerted to the reports. They sprang into action, tracking down and detaining Frank for questioning. They process 1 million loony Bigfoot lovers every year and usually find nothing, but the death of Frank's friend made it all too clear. They hadn't encountered a Bigfoot, but a real, genuine example of SCP-1000. SCP-1000 rarely ranks among the scariest or most dangerous SCPs, but underestimating the creature is a terrible mistake, because just looking at it gives you a 2% chance of dropping dead on the spot.
What? Okay, so he's got some kind of RPG mechanic going on where he just has 2% chance of instant death. I guess he's got, that's his critical roll, I guess. When he rolls a 20, you're just gone just by looking at him, I guess.
Frank, despite losing his friend, was one of the lucky ones. The Foundation debriefed him before administering amnestics and making sure that he never ventured back into those mysterious forests in the Pacific Northwest region. Director Jones, the site director charged with the management of SCP-1000 populations, was given the information on this latest case of an SCP-1000 related fatality. It was a story he heard many times before. For Director Jones, they all seemed to bleed into one another. So what exactly is SCP-1000? And how did it leave poor Joseph dead in the woods? SCP-1000 is a whole species of large hominid ape-like creatures. They're largely nocturnal, but sightings of the creature during the day aren't unheard of. They're omnivorous, mostly seeming to consume plants and insects, and their fur is usually gray, brown, black, red, or occasionally white. The creatures have large eyes capable of impressive vision nestled underneath a pronounced Neanderthal-like brow. Another defining feature is the ridge of bone on the forehead, much like that of a gorilla, that is present in both sexes. According to Foundation studies, the creatures exhibit a level of intelligence on par with that of the common chimpanzee, but nowhere near that of us humans. What they lack in intelligence, though, they make up for in size. The adults can be as large as 10 feet tall and weigh up to 600 pounds. Despite their great size and impressive strength, the creatures are neither aggressive nor territorial. In fact, they seem to instinctively avoid humans, mostly residing deep in the forests of the American Pacific Northwest and in the Himalayan Alps.
Okay, so it's following the general idea and themes of Bigfoot as we traditionally know him.
There have been sightings of SCP-1000 on every continent, though the Foundation has taken pains to exterminate all SCP-1000 populations situated near human population centers to prevent a potential disaster, considering the 2% chance of instantaneous death upon visual contact. That brings us to our second question. What is it that makes these seemingly harmless creatures so dangerous? Sadly, for both these unfortunate creatures and us humans, the danger is beyond the control of SCP-1000. According to Foundation research, SCP-1000 likely evolved alongside us Homo sapiens until a tragedy occurred between 10 and 15,000 years ago. A mysterious extinction event eliminated the vast majority of their species, leaving only 1 to 5% alive in the aftermath. What happened? It's believed that around this time, SCP-1000 contracted what the Foundation refers to as an anomalous pseudo-disease. Meet SCP-1000-F1. A disease that is passed along at the genetic level and is so durable that it persists in the species to this day. The tiny fraction of the population that are immune to its effects manage to survive, but the majority who aren't immune die shortly after birth. This is why the overall population remains relatively low to this day.
Okay, a little bit of an explanation as to why they are so rare, it seems. Because on one hand, you've got the Foundation, who is going around and eliminating groups of SCP-1000 just to keep people safe. And then on top of it, they also suffer from their own genetic disease or disorder that keeps them from really having their births be viable. So it's almost like the Krogan genophage, if you will, from Mass Effect.
It's a disease that only appears to affect hominids, including humans, chimpanzees, bonobos, and non-immune instances of SCP-1000. Any hominid that lays eyes on a carrier of the disease has a 2% chance of experiencing immediate brain death.
Okay, so it's this disease that also, not only does it cull their own population, but that's what causes 2% chance of death on observation.
While a 2% chance of instant death may not seem all that threatening, at least when compared to some other nightmare-inducing SCP.
No, it's totally threatening. It entirely depends on how this 2% chance is actually activated. Is it a 2% chance every single time you lay your eyes on the creature? As in, I look at it, boom, that's my 2% chance that I just rolled the dice on. I turn my head to look away, I look back at it, boom, I'm rolling the dice again with a 2% chance of death. Or is it, I look at him, I take my 2% chance, and if I survive, then that's it. And from then on, I'm immune because it's some disease causing it, and it didn't get me the first time, so I'm okay because I built up some kind of immunity or resistance to it, or I'm just simply immune to its effects altogether. But if it's like the first thing I said, where it's simply a 2% chance every time you look at it, meaning you're essentially taking your life into your own hands every time you lay eyes on this creature. So if you look at him 5, 10, 50 times a day, well, that's 5, 10, 50 times. You might not make it out of there. So if that's the case, then yeah, these things are super, super dangerous. It's actually kind of a bummer for SCP-1000. That would make them a target for the rest of the world. This virus they have is kind of like a death sentence for them, honestly, because not only does it keep their own population low, but it also makes them an unwilling antagonist to any hominids. This is kind of a sad story, actually, for Bigfoot.
The truly scary part is that the percentage is cumulative. In other words, the longer one observes a carrier of SCP-1000-F1, the higher that percentage rises, the greater your chance of experiencing an abrupt death.
They said it is cumulative, which leads me to believe that yes, every single time you're looking at an instance of SCP-1000, you're rolling the dice with your life. with a 2% chance that you're not going to make it out of there. But apparently, since it's a cumulative effect, it actually builds up. So the first time you roll the dice, well, that's a 2% chance you may kick the bucket. The second time you look at them, well, now it's a 4% chance, and then a 6, and then a 10% chance, and then a 12% chance, until that percentage becomes so high, it's guaranteed to eliminate anyone who observes them. Okay, that is wildly, wildly more dangerous than I initially thought it was. It's not good for Bigfoot. It's not good for Bigfoot or any of his kind.
According to Foundation studies, the percentage rises by around 1% every 20 minutes, and the percentage also varies between specimens, with some exhibiting a terrifyingly high death chance of 90% upon viewing. This death chance continues to occur in dead specimens if they carry the anomalous pseudovirus while alive, though thankfully the risk doesn't appear to apply to small fur or tissue samples.
Wow! Even the dead remains of an SCP-1000 instance is still lethal. Wow, okay. How Bigfoot has not been hunted to extinction by now, at least in the SCP universe, I don't know.
The Foundation's true concern actually goes far beyond SCP-1000 themselves. Because of the species' close relation to Homo sapiens, there's a worry that SCP-1000-F1 could transmit to humans, causing our own species to meet a similar fate. If humans did indeed become carriers of SCP-1000-F1, it's extremely likely that humanity would undergo an unprecedented extinction event, with billions across the globe dropping dead as brain death sets in en masse.
This is a tragedy, guys. I honestly thought that this Bigfoot video would be more about, oh, Bigfoot, and, you know, he's kind of cute, but kind of friendly, but still territorial, so you don't want to get in his way. No, he's a disease vector for a disease so deadly that it can kill you just by looking at someone infected, and it could potentially be cross-species infectious. So, this is really, really bad.
While full extermination of the entire species has been deemed unlikely, this existential threat they pose to humanity more than justifies the occasional culling of SCP-1000 populations. That was a lot to take in, right? First, the creature we thought was Bigfoot was actually a new species of SCP out in the wild. And second, these creatures could end human life as we know it if they made it into a population center. But what you're about to hear next, a dark secret only available to people with level 3 SCP Foundation clearance, is the most shocking SCP-1000 fact of all. Are you ready? The true secret of SCP-1000 is that what you've just heard is a lie. There is no anomalous pseudo-disease, and SCP-1000 poses no pathogenic threat to humanity whatsoever. Who would spread such a thing? The SCP Foundation, of course. Strictly speaking, the Foundation has disseminated 2 direct lies about the nature of SCP-1000. The first is that of the disease, which does not exist, nor has it ever existed.
I'm going to go ahead and venture a guess. So, if the Foundation was going to spread something that was a lie, that was that dangerous, I mean, the only logical reason to do something like that, to have a disinformation campaign against a specific target like that, is if you were intentionally trying to either gaslight people or sponsors or wherever they're getting their funding from in order to get more money, have a larger budget, or to intentionally cull and wipe these creatures out. Why would you want to intentionally cull or wipe these creatures out? They must pose some kind of threat to humanity. What kind of threat to humanity would you have to pose in order for a misinformation campaign that promotes the wiping out of your species? They must pose a pretty severe threat that goes beyond just, you know, if the lie is a fatal disease that you can die just by looking at them, then the reason for that lie must be even greater. It must be threatening not only their body, but maybe even their ideology, right? I mean, you don't really need that big of an excuse to be propagated around the world for a long time if you're just trying to cull some wild animals. So there must be something else with Bigfoot that maybe puts something for humanity in jeopardy. I don't know. Maybe Bigfoots are geniuses and they're going to take over the world and we're just trying to prevent that.
The second lie is about the creature's intelligence level. They're far smarter than the average chimp. In fact, they're every bit as intelligent as human beings.
Okay,
These
so they
were
are
all
intelligent.
lies formulated by Director Jones and the Foundation, as was the very existence of the Bigfoot myth. The Foundation has been spreading information that makes the very concept of the Sasquatch out to be a joke for decades, all to discredit and further push the very concept of SCP-1000 into the shadows. But why? The Foundation is no stranger to coming up with cover stories, but why would they put intentional lies into their own files to anyone below?
See, that's what I'm saying. This is very intentional. It's not a simple, like I said, it's not a simple culling of a wild animal for safety purposes. There would be no reason for this level of lying and this level of secrecy, even within the organization itself, in a massive, decades-long campaign of misinformation. So they're definitely trying to keep something secret here about Bigfoot and his race.
Level 3 clearance. Well, that all comes down to the horrifying truth behind the origins of today's SCP-1000 population. The creatures were first brought to the attention of the Foundation by outcast members of the Serpent's Hand, an organization dedicated to defying the Foundation's activities. These members, known as the Children of the Sun, told them the secret history of SCP-1000. Well, at first, Foundation personnel like Director Jones didn't want to believe what they were hearing. They soon came to terms with the horrifying truth. Humans and SCP-1000 did evolve alongside each other, with humans occupying the day and SCP-1000 the night. However, while humans were still basic hunter-gatherers, SCP-1000 were undergoing vast intellectual and societal development. They were able to create tools, weapons, agriculture, stable settlements, domesticated animals, and eventually even fully developed cities.
Okay, so they are smarter than Homo sapiens. It was a random guess I just said, but it looks like I'm right. They do appear to be smarter than at least earlier hominids and very early Homo sapiens. So I think I see why humanity has deemed them a threat and is working as hard as they can to not only keep their numbers low, but keep their existence as a myth or a joke.
It was like nothing the world had ever seen, and wouldn't see for thousands of years to come. Their numbers swelled into the tens of billions as they created culture and technology hitherto unimagined, including weapons of devastating power. Meanwhile, humanity was pushed to the brink of destruction by their competitors' rapid and seemingly unstoppable growth. It looked as though the human species had lost the evolutionary arms race and would have to bow out. But according to the Children of the Sun, a trickster forest god smiled upon humanity and gave them the power to use SCP-1000's weapons and technology against them. 70% of SCP-1000's population were wiped out in a single horrific day, known to the Children of the Sun as the Day of the Flowers, as every flower supposedly bloomed that day during the massacre. Humanity destroyed the entire civilization, and with the same technology they stole from these unfortunate creatures, the vengeful humans drove the apes mad. Their higher consciousnesses were blocked out, reducing them back into the states of mere animals. Once the massacre was done and everything that was built had been destroyed, we, the human race, used the SCP-1000 weapons to wipe any memory of the atrocity from our own minds. The advanced civilization of SCP-1000 had been wiped from history.
So not only were they more intelligent than the early humans by a significant margin, they were then turned on and essentially wiped out by Homo sapiens. I thought the virus was kind of sad, but this is even a little sadder because they were greater than even imagined. They were, for all intents and purposes, superior to Homo sapiens. I can't sit here and say that this is unprecedented behavior for humankind.
humans returned to their plodding path of evolution none the wiser. For thousands of years, all the way up until today, this time remained a mystery to us. So again, why did the Foundation lie to us? What did they have to gain by convincing us all that it was dangerous to even look at these creatures? Well, as the frequency of...
Because if people knew Bigfoot was real and people knew that they existed and it was a whole civilization, a whole culture, especially ones that used to be unarguably more intelligent than us, humanity doesn't want that kind of competition. They don't, and they never will. They're never going to want to have competition on our own planet where something else is smarter than human beings. It's just against human nature, honestly. We don't want to see things smarter than us. It makes us scared. That's just how people are.
Of sightings and the attempts of communication increased, people like Director Jones became aware of a frightening possibility. What if the pendulum was swinging back?
Right. If somehow human beings becoming smarter, reducing the numbers of SCP-1000s and using their technology against them, somehow that managed to revert the minds of SCPs into a more animalistic state, there's nothing to say that you can't go back the other way and reverse that and take them from this animalistic state and bring them up into a higher cognitive functioning again. It's completely possible. It happened in one direction. It's completely plausible that it could go the other way too. So
what if the apes were regaining their lost intelligence and worse, still harbored feelings of revenge for what we did to their species thousands of years ago? Even the mere possibility that they could do to us what we once did to them is a chance that the Foundation simply cannot take, and thus, limiting contact between humans and SCP-1000 at all costs is an absolute must. However, in spite of the Foundation's fears, one intercepted message from the apes suggests that their paranoia may be misplaced. This message, translated from an attempt at communicating with Foundation personnel, reads simply as follows: "We forgive you. Given choice for now, not forever. Let us back in." It's enough to make you wonder what species the Foundation should really be keeping tabs on here. After all, when it comes to meting out violence and death, humanity has a track record to rival the worst creatures in the Foundation containment cells.
Yep.
And few examples illustrate that better than the tragic case of SCP-1000.
So here's the thing about SCP-1000. We legitimately know that at least at one point in their history, they were more intelligent and more advanced than Homo sapiens, than human beings. One could argue in favor for SCP-1000 and say, you know what, they were probably emotionally more advanced than us as well. It's quite possible that when they say, hey, we forgive you, just let us back in, yeah, that could absolutely be a lie, and it could be a trap, and if we let them back in, they might wipe us out. Who knows? But the other side of that coin is maybe they are more emotionally evolved than us as well. Maybe they do know how to forgive and forget. I don't know. I really don't. But this was definitely one of the more interesting takes on the mythos of Bigfoot that I've seen. Pretty interesting. Definitely gives them a lot of history and backstory, and there could be entire stories told from the viewpoint of an SCP-1000 living in the heyday of their civilization. But anyways, guys, that was SCP-1000. Really liked it, really enjoyed it. A whole new perspective on the concept of Bigfoot, and I really enjoy those things. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please like and subscribe. As always, leave a comment down below. Let us know what other videos you want me to check out, what other SCPs you want to check out. And I'm curious, are there any other cryptid-based videos? Is there an SCP version of the Chupacabra? Is there an SCP version of the Loch Ness Monster? What about real life locations? Maybe like, is there an SCP version of the Bermuda Triangle or something like that? That'd be kind of interesting to look at. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for checking out the video. Take care of yourselves and have a great day.